Hey everybody, time to get our series started on paying for long-term care. Now, this is not a product sales spiel, I promise you, because I really do believe most people they self-insure or they don't have enough resources to throw money at products. So let's make sure that we have a good understanding of long-term care, who needs to be concerned about long-term care, and what resources are available, whether it's public resources or positioning your portfolio properly to be able to handle the increased expense of long-term care. So the first part of this, we're going to talk about kind of a 10,000-foot view, look at some statistics, look at what the salesman used to scare people into buying products. And then we're going to get into public assistance in part 2, and we'll look at some of the products that are out there in part 3. So here we go. Let's start with what is long-term care. Long-term care, we're talking about assistance provided to individuals for an extended period of time, okay? At some point, health insurance stops. If the doctors have got you back to the best that they can, then long-term care gets you from there. So it's commonly established by the activities of daily living, most commonly 2 of the 6, okay? So that's eating, bathing, dressing, transferring, incontinence, and using the bathroom issues, and then cognitive issues, or kind of that trump card that takes care of anything. For instance, Alzheimer's, dementia, you're automatically into the long-term care world, okay? So then let's look at some of the costs that are out there. And these can be embellished in any way I want. I could go pick statistics from the most expensive state, which weirdly right now seems to be Minnesota. It's usually the coastlines that are the most expensive for long-term care. But I've been weeding through all the data that's out there, and boy, Minnesota's pretty expensive, and that surprised me. So if we look at national averages, and I kind of like to compare the trajectory, so we kind of have a concept of what it's going to cost 10 years from now. The best, cleanest data out there is from 2021. You look at in-home care, and you're looking at, $5,000 a month. If you project the trajectory, the increasing costs that we have been seeing into the future, you're looking at $6,000-7,000 into the future a month for in-home care. And that one's a real difficult one. I talked to a lot of people about that. In a perfect world, that's ideal, but that's where a ton of abuse happens. So we got to be real careful with the in-home care. There's also a push for Medicaid to pay family members that are qualified to care for people. So understand there's a lot of options on that in-home care. Then there's the nursing home facility. So I want to make sure we clarify this. Nursing home facility, for instance, my mother-in-law has full-blown Alzheimer's and has for over 10 years. So we need to know that when we say nursing home, that means 24/7 care. That's full-blown Alzheimer's. Somebody's got to be paying attention at all times. National average, you're looking at somewhere around $8,000 a month for what they call a semi-private room. Private room is $9,000. Well, I'll be honest, my mother-in-law is in a really nice place in Scottsdale, and she had her own private room at $6,000 a month. And over the last 10 years, it's moved up to $7,000 a month. So again, these are national averages. Locally, you're going to find differences. We have ranges in Arizona anywhere from $3,000 a month on up to $10,000-$20,000 a month. We have everything. But she's in a really nice place in an expensive part of our town in Scottsdale, northern Scottsdale, and it's a great deal and works out really well. So projecting into the future, $10,000 to $12,000 depending on private room or semi-private room. And again, I have to make sure we understand nursing home facility, 24/7 care. This is glorified hospital stay. Most people, other than Alzheimer's, don't stay in full-blown nursing home facilities for very long. And that's so important to understand, because that number looks big and scary, and that's what a lot of salesmen are going to use to scare you. The reality is if you're in that bad a shape, other than Alzheimer's, you probably are not going to last that long. Then there's the assisted living world, and this is all over the board. Believe it or not, the adult daycare, just, the same as child daycare, hand them over for certain hours during the day. You're looking at $1,000 to $2,000 a month. But the assisted living facilities, this is such a huge range. We've got some great facilities here in Arizona that are $3,000, $4,000 a month for your own 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment. So understand that there's so many different versions of this assisted living concept. You have a la carte menus, so really you're just paying rent, and then you add on the services that you need, on up to everything's included. There's some facilities that lock in the increases into the future, so you don't have to worry about them raising rent on you. So right now, national average about $4,500 a month, projecting out to $6,000 a month. So that's the cleanest data that I can really decipher out there on the costs that we're looking at for long-term care and the variations of it. So again, I kind of mentioned the concept of each state has its own costs. And again, kind of that Northeast, really expensive. The whole West Coast is really expensive. And then strangely, Minnesota. I don't know how or why this happened. And also Wyoming, strangely. So there's a few outliers out there. So it looks like the northern states are a little more expensive. Arizona is not too bad considering how many people go to retire in Arizona. The costs are fairly reasonable compared to the rest of the US. And then the South is the cheap spot. So if you're looking for less expensive long-term care stays, the whole South, including Texas, looks pretty good. So keep that in mind. There's some great resources out there. There's a guy that I got this from that has a blog on expenses, and he calls it state arbitrage, I think. It's kind of a neat blog out there. So long-term care, who's in it? Well, this is the issue that we have to look at, because I think there's a very logical reason that this happens. Women live longer than men, and historically, because of that, the spouse passes away, and the surviving spouse is the one that typically ends up in some form of a care facility. Because as long as you're alive and married, you care for yourselves and you can help each other out. But because women live longer than men, that leaves a lot more women out there that are widowed, and that's how we end up with this. I can tell you, I've walked into many facilities in Arizona, and it is overwhelmingly filled with women. It's amazing how pronounced it is. So the average length of care is 2.2 years for women, and here's for men, but it's 3.7 years for women. And if there's Alzheimer's, you're looking at 5 years plus. As I stated, my mother-in-law is over 10 years now. 58% of men and 79% of women over 65 will need long-term care at some point. Now, that could be one day, that could be 10 years, but you look at those statistics. If you make it to 65 and then look at the statistics from there, it kind of gets rid of all the sudden death, the accidents, that type of stuff. Now we're looking at 58% for men, but 79% for women. So you're seeing these statistics start skewing towards women. Women stay longer. Okay, and a much greater percentage of women that make it to 65 go into a form of long-term care. So currently, or at least the best statistics, most recent clean statistics, 68% of nursing home residents and 72% of assisted living residents are women. In my experience, it's even higher than that. So state by state, just facility by facility, you'll see a lot more than that. 66% of Americans 85 and older are women. So again, you live longer than men. So these statistics, you can look at these and just start skewing and skewing and skewing these statistics. And it just really is pronounced. 80% of people over 100 years old are women. Okay. Roughly 66% of all long-term care claims, that means the insurance products that are out there, are paid for women. Women spend twice as many years in the disabled state than men. Okay, so all these statistics really, really, really do look at that. So look at the dynamics in your life. I had somebody, I sat down and I always, what are your thoughts on long-term care? What are your plans? And she looked at me and says, I raised a doctor. I'm fine. He's going to care for me. So I thought that was kind of funny. Everybody has their own thoughts on what they're going to do in the later years of their life. So we do have to think through that. Alzheimer's is definitely the scariest part of having to pay for long-term care. But the vast majority of people in long-term care are women. So we're also seeing statistically women are paying a lot more for long-term care because they're staying longer. I think that's an obvious part there as well. So this is more of an introduction. I want people to understand, the perspective and the statistics. I want you to be aware of the real numbers out there so they're not used to scare you. It shouldn't scare you that mostly women are in long-term care. It shouldn't be a surprise. Because I think especially the baby boomer generation, the statistics really push towards that, and it's very logical. Okay, so remember, next part, we're going to jump into some of the public assistance programs out there, and then we'll look at ways to position portfolio to help pay for that long-term care. So thanks again. We'll see you next week.